My name is Violet, and I am 26 years old. I never imagined I would stand in front of a bank holding my late grandfather's worn-out card, the only thing connecting me to him 7 years after his passing. Last night, my parents threw me out with nothing but the clothes on my back and an old backpack. In my coat pocket, I discovered this card, a keepsake I always carried. When I handed it to the teller, the bank manager rushed out face pale and called security immediately. Before we dive into what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to find out why a simple bank card caused such chaos. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how I ended up homeless, with nothing but a memory in my pocket. My father, Gregory, is 54 years old and works as the head accountant for a real estate development company. He measures everything in dollars and cents, emotions, relationships, even his own children. To him, love is a transaction, and I never seem to offer enough return on his investment. My mother, Patricia, is 52. She gave up her career decades ago to become a homemaker, but her real occupation is maintaining appearances. She cares deeply about what the neighbors think, what her friends at the country club whisper, and whether our family photo looks perfect on the mantle. She depends entirely on my father for everything, which means she never contradicts him, even when she should. Then there is my younger brother, Derek. At 23, he is still pursuing his MBA on our parents' dime, driving a car they bought him, and spending money they deposit into his account every month. He has never worked a real job in his life, yet somehow he believes he is superior to everyone, especially me. Growing up, I was the invisible child, the daughter who existed but was never truly seen. But there was one person who saw me clearly. My grandfather, Harold. Harold was my father's father, though you would never guess they shared blood. Where my father is cold and calculating, Grandpa was warm and genuine. He lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by trees and sawdust and the smell of fresh-cut wood. He was a carpenter by trade, a craftsman who could turn rough lumber into beautiful furniture with his weathered hands. Every summer when my parents packed their bags for European vacations with Derek, they would drop me off at Grandpa's house. They called it convenient. I called it the best weeks of my entire year. Those summers shaped who I am. Grandpa taught me how to sand wood until it felt like silk, how to measure twice and cut, once how to see the beauty in simple things. He told me stories about his youth, about building things from nothing, about the value of honest work. One evening, when I was about 16, we sat on his porch watching fireflies dance across the yard. He turned to me with those kind eyes and said something I have never forgotten. "Violet, you have something your family does not have. You have a heart that knows how to love the right way. Hold on to that, sweetheart. It is worth more than all the money in the world." I did not fully understand what he meant back then, but I kept those words tucked away in my heart like a secret treasure. When I turned 19, everything changed. Grandpa's heart was failing, and the doctor said he did not have much time left. I visited him as often as I could, sneaking away from college classes and part-time jobs just to sit beside his bed and hold his hand. A week before he passed, he asked my parents and Derek to leave the room. He said he wanted to speak with me alone. With trembling fingers, he reached into the drawer of his nightstand and pulled out an old bank card. The plastic was faded, the numbers barely visible from years of wear. He pressed it into my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Keep this safe," he whispered. "Do not ever use it unless you truly need to. And when that day comes, go to the main branch on Madison Street. Promise me." I promised, though I did not understand why. It was just a bank card, probably connected to some small savings account he had set aside. I kissed his forehead and told him I loved him. 7 days later, he was gone. My father did not bother with a proper funeral. He arranged a brief service at the cheapest funeral home in town, invited only a handful of people, and complained the entire time about the expense. When we cleared out Grandpa's house, my father searched everywhere for valuables, for cash, for anything worth selling. He found nothing but old tools and worn furniture. "He was worthless until the end," my father muttered, just like I always said. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that Grandpa was worth more than he could ever comprehend, but I stayed silent. I had learned by then that speaking up only brought punishment. The only thing I took from that house was Grandpa's old work coat. It still smelled like sawdust and pine like summer afternoons in his workshop. I wore it everywhere, and I kept his bank card in the inside pocket right over my heart. I never told anyone about it. It was my secret, my last connection to the only person who ever truly loved me. After Grandpa died, I threw myself into building a life of my own. I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through college and graduated with a degree in interior design. I got hired at a small design firm, earning enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy groceries, but never enough to feel secure. I was proud of what I had accomplished on my own. My parents never helped me financially. Not once. They told me that daughters need to learn independence, that supporting me would make me weak. Meanwhile, they bought Derek a luxury car for his 21st birthday and paid for his apartment near the business school campus. I accepted this inequality because fighting it only made things worse. I just wanted peace. I just wanted to survive. But surviving was about to get much harder. 3 months before the night that changed everything, my design firm closed its doors. The owner had made some bad investments, and suddenly, I was unemployed. I spent every dollar I had saved on rent and groceries while searching desperately for a new job. When my savings ran out, and I could not make the next month's payment, I had no choice but to swallow my pride and ask my parents for help. My father agreed to let me stay at the family home, but his conditions made it clear I was not a daughter returning to the nest. I was an inconvenience being tolerated. "You will cook every meal," he announced. "You will clean every room. You will do the laundry, the shopping, and anything else your mother needs. You will not bother Derek. You will stay out of our way. And you will find a job immediately." I agreed. What choice did I have? I moved into the small guest room in the basement, the one with no windows, and a mattress that smelled like mildew. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself things would get better. They did not. For 3 months, I lived like a servant in the house where I grew up. I woke before dawn to prepare breakfast. I scrubbed floors and toilets and windows. I cooked dinner and washed dishes and folded laundry. My mother criticized everything I did. The food was too salty or too bland. The floors were not shiny enough. The towels were not folded correctly. My father barely acknowledged my existence. He walked past me like I was furniture, occasionally grunting an order without making eye contact. Derek treated me worse. He left his dirty clothes in piles outside my door. He demanded I bring him snacks while he watched television. He laughed when I struggled to carry heavy grocery bags up the stairs. Throughout all of this, I continued searching for work. I went to interviews whenever I could, wearing my nicest clothes and putting on my most professional smile. Some companies seemed interested, but nothing materialized. I picked up a few freelance design projects, earning small amounts that I saved carefully, hoping to eventually have enough to escape. Then came the night everything fell apart. Derek had started dating a woman named Samantha, the daughter of a wealthy investment banker. She was beautiful in a sharp, cold way, with manicured nails and designer clothes, and a smile that never reached her eyes. Derek was desperate to impress her family, convinced that marrying Samantha would secure his financial future. One evening, Derek brought Samantha home for dinner. I cooked for hours, preparing an elaborate meal while they lounged in the living room. When I called everyone to the table, Samantha wandered around the house examining everything with a critical eye. She stopped in front of the china cabinet, where my grandmother's antique vase sat on the top shelf. It was a delicate piece of blue and white porcelain hand, painted with scenes of flowers and birds. My grandmother had brought it from her childhood home, and it was one of the few things she had left behind when she passed. I cherished it. "This is pretty," Samantha said, reaching up to touch it. "Is it valuable?" Before I could warn her to be careful, she lifted it off the shelf. Her grip slipped, the vase tumbled through the air, and shattered against the hardwood floor, exploding into 100 irreparable pieces. I dropped to my knees, gathering the fragments with shaking hands. My grandmother's vase, the last physical reminder of her gentle presence in my life. Gone. Samantha laughed. "It is just a cheap vase," she said dismissively. "Why are you making such a big deal about it?" I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face. "This was my grandmother's," I said quietly. The value was not in the money. It was in the memory. Samantha rolled her eyes. "Well, maybe you should not have put fragile things where people can reach them." Something inside me cracked. "Maybe you should be more careful with things that do not belong to you," I replied. The room went silent. Derek's face turned red with anger. "How dare you speak to my girlfriend like that?" he snarled. "I apologize if I was rude," I said, keeping my voice steady, but she broke something irreplaceable and showed no remorse. "I think I am entitled to be upset." Derek grabbed my arm and squeezed hard enough to leave bruises. "You will apologize properly," he hissed, "or I will make you regret it." I pulled away from him and walked to my room without another word. I knew there would be consequences, but I could not bring myself to apologize for something that was not my fault. The consequences came faster than I expected. That night around 9 o'clock, my father summoned me to the living room. He sat in his leather chair like a king on a throne, my mother perched on the sofa beside him with her eyes fixed on the floor. Derek stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, smirking with satisfaction. "Violet," my father began, his voice cold as ice. "Derek tells me you insulted and humiliated his guest this evening." "That is not what happened," I protested. "Samantha broke Grandma's vase and laughed about it. I simply expressed that I was upset because it had sentimental value." My father held up his hand. "I am not interested in your excuses. You have been a burden on this household for 3 months. You eat our food, use our electricity, and contribute nothing but complaints. And now you disrespect the woman your brother intends to marry." "I intended to marry." I glanced at Derek, who just smiled wider. "I have made my decision," my father continued. "You are no longer welcome in this house. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and leave." My heart stopped. "Dad, please. I have nowhere to go. If you could just give me a few more weeks to find a place. The decision is final." He stood up and walked toward his study. "Patricia, make sure she is gone within the hour." My mother finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "You should go pack now, Violet." "Mom." I reached for her hand. "Please help me. Please say something to him." She pulled away. "You heard your father. There is nothing I can do." I stared at her for a long moment, memorizing the face of the woman who had given birth to me, but never truly been my mother. Then I turned and walked to the basement. I packed quickly, throwing clothes and toiletries into an old backpack. I did not have much. When I finished, I grabbed the one thing that mattered most, Grandpa's old work coat. I slipped it on, feeling the worn fabric settle around my shoulders like a protective embrace. At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked out the front door. Rain had begun to fall, a cold drizzle that soaked through my clothes within minutes. Behind me, I heard the lock click into place. I was 26 years old, and I was homeless. I walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few miles. The rain intensified, plastering my hair to my face and seeping through every layer of clothing. I had nowhere to go. No friends I felt comfortable calling at this hour, no family except the ones who had just thrown me away. In my pocket, my phone showed 2% battery. In my wallet, I had exactly $23. Eventually, I found a 24-hour coffee shop in a strip mall and ducked inside. The warmth hit me like a physical force, making me shiver harder before my body began to adjust. The barista, a young man with tired eyes and a kind face, looked at my soaked clothes and dripping hair with concern. "Rough night," he asked gently. "You could say that." I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a small black coffee, and found a seat in the corner where I could watch the door. I stayed there all night nursing that single coffee, watching the hours tick by on the clock above the counter. I tried not to cry. I tried to form some kind of plan, but my mind kept returning to the same devastating loop. My parents had thrown me away like garbage, and no one had tried to stop them. Around 6 in the morning, the rain finally stopped. Gray light filtered through the windows, painting the world in shades of pale silver. I gathered my damp belongings and stepped outside, breathing in air that smelled like wet pavement and exhaustion. I walked to a nearby park and found a bench where the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. Sitting there, I emptied my backpack to take inventory. A few changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my wallet with its pathetic $23, and Grandpa's coat. Absently, I slipped my hands into the coat's pockets, seeking comfort in its familiar texture. My fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular, the bank card. I pulled it out and stared at it in the early morning light. The plastic was yellowed with age, the numbers faded but still legible. It did not look like a key to anything important, just an old card that an old man had kept for reasons I never understood. But I remembered his words spoken in that quiet hospital room 7 years ago. Do not ever use it, unless you truly need to. Did I truly need to? Now I was homeless. I had $23 to my name. My family had abandoned me. If this was not a moment of true need, what was, and when that day comes, go to the main branch on Madison Street. I pulled out my dying phone and searched for First National Bank on Madison Street. The main branch was about 45 minutes away by bus. It was one of the oldest and most prestigious banks in the city, the kind of place where wealthy families manage their fortunes. Why would Grandpa, a simple carpenter who lived in a modest house, have a card from such a bank? I did not know the answer. But I had nothing left to lose by finding out. I stood up, shouldered my backpack, and walked to the nearest bus stop. The fare cost $2.50, leaving me with just over $20. I climbed aboard, found a seat by the window, and watched the city slide past as we rumbled toward Madison Street. As I rode, I thought about Grandpa. I remembered his calloused hands and warm smile. I remembered the way he hummed while he worked old songs from his youth that I never recognized but loved anyway. I remembered the smell of sawdust and the satisfaction of sanding a rough board until it gleamed. Grandpa never talked about money. He never seemed to care about wealth or status or material things. He lived simply and found joy in simple pleasures. But he had kept this card, hidden it away, and made me promise to use it only when I truly needed to. What did you leave for me, Grandpa? I whispered to myself. What were you trying to protect me from? The bus rolled on toward answers I could not yet imagine. The main branch of First National Bank occupied a grand old building on Madison Street, all marble columns and brass fixtures, and an air of intimidating wealth. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, suddenly aware of how I must look, clothes wrinkled, and still slightly damp hair tangled a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Everyone walking in and out of those polished doors wore expensive suits and carried leather briefcases. I did not belong here, but I had promised Grandpa and I had nowhere else to go. Taking a deep breath, I pushed through the heavy glass doors and entered a lobby that seemed designed to make ordinary people feel small. The ceiling soared 2 stories above my head, decorated with intricate moldings and a chandelier that probably cost more than every apartment I had ever rented combined. The floor was polished marble that reflected the lights like still water. I approached the queue of customers waiting for tellers and took my place at the end. My heart hammered against my ribs. What was I doing here? What did I expect to find? A few $100s that Grandpa had saved. Maybe 1,000 if I was lucky. Whatever it was, I needed it. Even a small amount could buy me time to find a job and get back on my feet. The line moved slowly. I watched the tellers work their movements efficient and professional. Most of the customers were older, well-dressed, clearly comfortable in this environment. A few of them glanced at me with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disdain. Finally, it was my turn. I approached the window and found myself facing a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and gold-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. Her nameplate read, Margaret. "Good morning," she said in a polished voice. "How may I help you today? I placed the old bank card on the counter between us. I would like to check the balance on this account, please." Margaret picked up the card and examined it with a slight frown, probably wondering how such a shabby piece of plastic had ended up in her pristine bank. She ran it through her scanner and turned to her computer screen. What happened next is something I will never forget as long as I live. Margaret's expression changed in an instant. The professional courtesy drained from her face, replaced by something I could not quite identify. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open slightly. She stood up so abruptly that her chair rolled backward and bumped into the wall. "Excuse me for just one moment," she said, her voice suddenly breathless. "Please wait right here." Before I could respond, she hurried through a door behind the teller windows, disappearing into some back office area. I stood frozen at the counter, utterly confused. Around me, other customers began to stare. I heard whispers. The minutes stretched out like hours. I considered running. Whatever was happening, it could not be good. Maybe the card was flagged as stolen. Maybe there was some kind of fraud alert. Maybe I was about to be arrested for something I did not understand. But I stayed. I had promised Grandpa. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 minutes, the door behind the tellers opened again. Margaret emerged, followed by a tall man in his 50s, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit. His hair was silver at the temples, his face carefully composed, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made my stomach drop. He walked directly toward me, and as he approached, he nodded to someone behind me. I turned to see 2 uniformed security guards closing in on either side. My heart nearly stopped. This is it, I thought. They think I stole this card. They are going to arrest me. The man in the suit stopped on the other side of the counter and studied me for a long moment. His gaze swept over my disheveled appearance, my worn backpack, my frightened expression. "I am Robert Caldwell," he said finally. "I am the manager of this branch. May I ask where you obtained this card?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. It belonged to my grandfather. He gave it to me before he passed away. "And your grandfather's name?" "Harold. Harold Eugene Whitmore." Something shifted in Robert Caldwell's expression. He exchanged a glance with Margaret, then looked back at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "I am going to need you to come with me to a private office," he said. "We need to verify some information." "Am I in trouble?" I asked, glancing at the security guards. "That depends," Robert replied carefully. "Please come with me." I did not feel like I had a choice. With a security guard on each side and Robert Caldwell leading the way, I was escorted through the main lobby past curious stares and whispered speculation into a hallway I had not noticed before. We stopped at a door marked Conference Room A. Robert held it open and gestured for me to enter. Inside was a long table surrounded by leather chairs, a view of the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, and nothing that made me feel any less terrified. I sat in the chair Robert indicated, and the security guards took up positions by the door. Robert sat across from me and folded his hands on the table. "Miss, I need to verify your identity. Do you have any identification with you?" I fumbled in my wallet and produced my driver's license. Robert examined it carefully, comparing my face to the photo, reading my name aloud. "Violet Ann Whitmore," he murmured. "Born October 15th. Address listed as—" "That is my old apartment," I said quickly. "I do not live there anymore." He nodded and set the license aside. "Now I need you to answer some questions about your grandfather. His full date of birth, please." May 3rd, 1942. Date of death, November 18th, 7 years ago. His occupation. He was a carpenter. He made furniture. His last known address, 14 Maple Drive out past the old mill. Robert made notes as I spoke. With each answer, something in his posture relaxed slightly, though his expression remained serious. Finally, he set down his pen and looked at me with an expression I could not read. "Wait here," he said. I need to make a phone call." He stepped out of the room, leaving me alone with the security guards. They stood silently by the door, not threatening, but not friendly either. I stared at my hands at Grandpa's old card lying on the table and tried to understand what was happening. Through the door, I could hear fragments of Robert's phone conversation. The words did not make sense to me. Inheritance account, Harold Whitmore legal beneficiary verification complete. What had Grandpa gotten me into? Robert returned 15 minutes later, but his entire demeanor had transformed. He dismissed the security guards with a wave, closed the door behind them, and approached me with something that looked almost like reverence. "Miss Whitmore," he said, and his voice had changed to softer and more respectful. "I apologize for the way you were treated when you arrived. There were protocols we had to follow. But now that your identity has been verified, I need to explain something very important." He sat down across from me again, but this time he pulled his chair closer, as if sharing a secret. "The card you brought in today," he began, "is connected to a very special account. It is what we call a legacy inheritance, set up decades ago, with very specific conditions. The account could only be accessed if the designated beneficiary came to this specific branch and presented this specific card in person." I stared at him. "I do not understand. My grandfather was a carpenter. He lived in a small house. He did not have any money." Robert smiled slightly. That is what most people believed. But Harold Eugene Whitmore was not always just a carpenter. He opened a folder that had materialized on the table, though I had not noticed him bring it in. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, legal documents. Robert spread them out before me like pieces of a puzzle. 50 years ago, he explained, your grandfather and 2 friends started a small business manufacturing handcrafted wooden furniture. They called it Whitmore and Sons, even though your grandfather was the only one with a son. The company started in a garage, but within a decade, it had grown into one of the largest furniture manufacturers in the region. I picked up one of the photographs with trembling hands. It showed 3 young men standing in front of a warehouse grinning at the camera. I recognized Grandpa immediately, his smile unchanged by the decades that separated this image from my memories. Your grandfather was the creative force behind the company, Robert continued. He designed every piece, but when the company went public and the money started pouring in, he did not want that life. He sold his shares to his partners and stepped away. He returned to what he loved, working with wood in his small shop, living simply. But what about the money? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Robert pushed a document across the table. It was an account statement. When I saw the number at the bottom, I forgot how to breathe. $4,600,000. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling out of my chair. That cannot be right, I gasped. That is impossible. Your grandfather invested his proceeds from the sale wisely, Robert explained. He put them in this account and instructed us to let them grow. Over 50 years with compound interest and careful management, this is the result. But why did he not spend it? Why did he not tell anyone? Robert reached into the folder and withdrew a sealed envelope yellowed with age. Written on the front in handwriting, I recognized instantly were the words, "For Violet, my beloved granddaughter." "He left this for you," Robert said gently. "Perhaps it will explain." My hands shook so badly that I could barely open the envelope. Inside was a letter several pages long, written in Grandpa's careful script. I began to read, and with every word tears spilled down my cheeks. "My dearest Violet, if you are reading this, then you have come to the bank just as I asked. I hope it was not too difficult to get here. I hope life has been kind to you. But knowing my son, I suspect it has not been, and that is why I am writing this letter. I have always seen you, sweetheart. Even when you thought you were invisible, I saw you. I saw how hard you worked, how much you cared, how brightly you shone even when everyone around you tried to dim your light. You have my heart, Violet. You always did. I did not leave this money to my son because I know what kind of man he became. I watched him grow cold and selfish, obsessed with status and appearances. He would have wasted this inheritance on foolishness, just as he has wasted so much else. But you, my darling girl, you will use it wisely. I know you will. This money is not a reward. It is freedom. It is my way of telling you that you deserve to live life on your own terms, without depending on anyone who does not appreciate your worth. Use it to build something beautiful. Use it to help others. Use it to be happy. And Violet, one more thing. Do not waste your precious energy on revenge. Your father and your brother will face the consequences of their actions eventually. That is how life works. The best revenge is simply living well. I love you more than words can say. Be brave, be kind, be yourself. Forever yours. Grandpa Harold, I sat in that conference room and sobbed. Not because of the money, though, that was overwhelming enough. I cried because my grandfather had loved me so completely that he had spent decades planning for this moment. He had known somehow that I would need saving, and he had made sure he would be there to save me, even from beyond the grave. Robert waited patiently while I composed myself, then walked me through the practical details. There would be paperwork to sign, legal procedures to complete, but the bank would handle everything. They had a team of lawyers on retainer specifically for situations like this. Within a few weeks, the funds would be fully transferred to my name. As we finished the last of the documents, Robert reached into his desk and produced a new bank card, sleek and modern, with my name embossed in silver letters. "Welcome to First National Bank, Miss Whitmore," he said with a warm smile. "We are honored to count you among our valued clients." I left the bank 2 hours later with my head spinning and my heart so full it ached. The same streets that had seemed so cold and hostile that morning now glowed with possibility. I was still wearing dirty clothes and carrying a battered backpack, but everything had changed. Everything. 2 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers and paperwork and life-altering decisions. I rented an apartment in a nice part of town. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable and safe. I bought new clothes that actually fit. I ate regular meals and slept in a real bed. For the first time in months, I felt like a human being again. But I was not content to simply exist. Grandpa had given me freedom, and I intended to use it wisely. I started my own interior design company and named it Harold Design, in honor of the man who had made everything possible. I rented a small office space, hired an assistant, and began reaching out to potential clients. The work was challenging and exciting, exactly what I needed to rebuild my confidence. I also hired a lawyer, a sharp and formidable woman named Diana, who came highly recommended by the bank. I had a feeling I would need her services soon. I was right. It did not take long for word to spread. A local business magazine ran a small article about the mysterious inheritance of Harold Whitmore, the reclusive furniture designer who had quietly become a millionaire. They did not print my name, but anyone who knew the family could connect the dots. My father certainly did. The phone calls started 3 weeks after my visit to the bank. First from Derek, his voice suddenly sweet and apologetic. "Violet, it is me. I know things have been rough between us, but I just wanted to check in. Make sure you are okay. Maybe we could get coffee sometime." I did not answer. Then from my mother, her tone dripping with manufactured warmth. "Violet, honey, I have been so worried about you. Your father feels terrible about that misunderstanding. Why don't you come home and we can talk about it? We miss you so much." I did not answer that one either. Finally, my father called. His message was shorter and more direct. "Violet, call me back. We need to discuss the situation with your grandfather's estate. This affects the entire family." I listened to his voicemail 3 times, marveling at how entitled he sounded. The situation. As if my inheritance was a problem he needed to manage. As if he had any claim to money that Grandpa had specifically kept from him. I did not call back, but I did agree eventually to meet them. Diana advised against it, but I needed closure. I needed to say the things I had kept bottled up for 26 years. And I needed to see their faces when they realized they had lost. We met at an upscale restaurant in the financial district, the kind of place my father loved because it made him feel important. I arrived first, dressed in a tailored blazer and silk blouse. My hair professionally styled, my makeup flawless. I looked like a woman in control of her life because for the first time I was. They arrived together, a united front. My father in his best suit, my mother in pearls, Derek trailing behind with a nervous expression. They stopped short when they saw me, clearly surprised by my transformation. "Violet," my father said, recovering quickly. "You look well." "I am well," I replied. "Please sit down." They sat. We ordered. The small talk was excruciating weather traffic neighborhood gossip. I let them squirm through appetizers before my father finally addressed the elephant in the room. "So," he said, leaning forward with his most persuasive smile, "about your grandfather's estate. I spoke with a lawyer, and there may be grounds to challenge the will. That money belonged to my father, which means it should be distributed among his legal heirs. That includes me, and by extension your mother and brother." I set down my fork and looked at him steadily. "Did you read the terms of the trust? The terms are irrelevant. The point is that you have come into a significant sum of money, and the right thing to do is share it with your family." I almost laughed. Share it with my family. You mean the family that kicked me out of the house with nowhere to go? The family that treated me like a servant for 3 months? The family that has never once supported me, encouraged me, or shown me any real love? My mother's face crumpled. "Violet, that is not fair. We have always loved you." "Have you?" I turned to her. "When Dad told me to leave, you did not say a single word in my defense. You just sat there and let it happen." "I did not know what to do," she protested weakly. "You could have done something, anything, but you chose to do nothing. That is a choice, Mom, and it is one you have made over and over again my entire life." My father's expression hardened. "Enough of this melodrama. The fact remains that you have money that rightfully belongs to this family. If you refuse to share it voluntarily, we will have no choice but to pursue legal action." I smiled. "I was hoping you would say that." I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "This is my lawyer, Diana Chen. She is very good. She will be happy to respond to any legal claims you want to make." My father picked up the card, his jaw tightening. "You think you can fight me in court? I do not think anything." "I know. Grandpa set up that trust specifically to keep you from getting your hands on it. The legal documents are airtight. Diana has already reviewed everything. If you sue me, you will lose, and you will have to pay my legal fees on top of your own." I stood up and placed enough cash on the table to cover the entire meal. "I am not going to share a single dollar with any of you," I said calmly. "But I am also not going to waste my energy hating you. Grandpa taught me that the best revenge is living well, so that is what I am going to do. I am going to live my life, build my business, and be happy. And you can do whatever you want with that information." I picked up my purse and looked at each of them one last time. My father with his impotent rage, my mother with her guilty tears, my brother with his sullen silence. "Goodbye," I said. "Do not contact me again." I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high and my heart finally free. They sued anyway, of course. My father was too proud to let it go. But Diana demolished their case in a matter of weeks. The judge ruled that Grandpa's trust was legally sound, that I was the sole rightful beneficiary, and that my father's claims had no merit. He was ordered to pay court costs and legal fees for both sides, a sum that put a significant dent in his savings. The case made the local news, which meant the whole community learned about how Gregory Whitmore had tried to steal his daughter's inheritance after kicking her out of the house. His reputation, which he valued above almost everything else, was ruined. I did not celebrate his downfall, but I did not mourn it either. A year has passed since that day at the bank, and I am a different person than the frightened woman who walked through those marble doors with nothing but an old card and desperate hope. Herald Design has grown beyond my wildest dreams. We have an office with 10 employees, a portfolio of beautiful projects, and a reputation for creativity and quality. I pour everything I have into this company because it carries my grandfather's name and his legacy. I do not live extravagantly, despite having the means to do so. I rent a modest apartment, drive a practical car, and save most of my income. Grandpa lived simply, and I have learned from his example. Money is a tool, not a destination. But I did make one indulgent purchase. I bought Grandpa's old house on Maple Drive, the one where I spent those magical summers learning to work with wood and finding the only family love I ever knew. I restored it carefully, preserving everything that made it special while adding modern comforts. On weekends, I drive out there and spend hours in his old workshop sanding boards and building furniture just like he taught me. I have made friends, real friends, who care about me as a person, rather than what I can do for them. I met a man named Lucas, an architect with kind eyes and a gentle soul who looks at me like I am something precious. We are taking things slow, but for the first time in my life, I believe I might be capable of letting someone truly love me. I started seeing a therapist to work through the wounds my family inflicted. It is hard work excavating old pain and learning new patterns, but it is worth it. I deserve to heal. I deserve to be whole. And I created something I am especially proud of, the Harold Whitmore Scholarship Fund. Every year, it provides financial support to design students from difficult backgrounds, young people who remind me of myself. Grandpa believed in giving people tools to build their own futures, and this is my way of continuing his mission. I visit his grave on the anniversary of his death and on his birthday. I bring flowers and sit on the grass beside his headstone and tell him everything that has happened. I like to think he can hear me somehow. I like to think he is proud. As for my family, I do not have much contact with them anymore. I heard through distant relatives that my parents divorced after the lawsuit. My father's financial situation deteriorated, and my mother could not handle the loss of status. Derek's business ventures failed one after another, and he eventually had to get a regular job like everyone else. I do not wish them ill. I honestly do not think about them much at all. That is its own kind of freedom. Last week, I was sitting in Grandpa's workshop, holding the old bank card that started everything. The plastic is even more faded now, the numbers almost invisible. But I keep it as a reminder of what he did for me. Grandpa knew I would need saving someday. He knew his own son would fail me, and he planned for that failure decades in advance. He gave me the ultimate gift, the ability to walk away from people who did not deserve me and build a life that did. I looked out the window at the sun setting through the trees, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I thought about all the dark days that had led me here, the loneliness, the cruelty, the night I walked out into the rain with nothing, and I thought about what waited on the other side of that darkness. I whispered into the quiet room, I did it, Grandpa. I am living my life, and I am happy. A breeze stirred through the open window, carrying the scent of pine and sawdust. I smiled and wiped away a tear. Sometimes the people who love us most are not the ones closest to us in blood or proximity. Sometimes they see us from a distance and love us anyway, planning and hoping and waiting for the day when we finally find our way home. Sometimes getting kicked out of the house you grew up in is not an ending at all. It is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. If you have ever felt invisible to your own family, if you have ever wondered whether anyone truly sees you, I hope my story gives you hope. Someone out there loves you. Someone is rooting for you. And one day when you least expect it, you might discover that they left you something wonderful to find. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my story today. I would love to know what you think. Have you ever received an unexpected gift that changed your life? Or maybe you have your own story about finding love in surprising places. Share it in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you want to see more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Wishing you all the freedom to live your own beautiful life. Take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes the best doors open only after the old ones close behind you.